Members of council, staff? Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, members of council, members of the senior management team. I see we have quorum, so I call this session of Policy and Priorities, June 20th, in session. And first of all, is there, after looking at the agenda, oh, I'm sorry, should I do this?
Adopt the agenda first.
Okay, that the agenda of the regular policy and priorities needs to be adopted. Is that suitable? And we vote on that. All those in favor? Good, and it is accepted. Quorum, oh no, we have that. We are looking for disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anyone have any interest to declare?
None, Mr. Chair.
Okay, please note that.
Want to sign this for me, please?
And we have here,
I'm just going to sign that for me first.
right there,
That's your first item of
this is the
business.
first one. So we have a motion brought forward by Councilor Kersey that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the Fire Decontamination Policy Report, June 2016, and recommend that Council approve the following policies. 1, personal protective equipment decontamination. 2, apparatus decontamination. 3, Pelham respiratory protection program. And 4, self-contained breathing apparatus. Any discussion
Thank you.
by members. Councilor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to say in advance, I appreciate all the work that's been done on all of these policies that are being brought forward to us, and all of them are important. What bothers me is that they seem to be far beyond policies. They are more much of it is procedure and things that we really don't need to encase in a policy. You know, we can have a policy that basically says that decontamination of personal protective equipment must be carried out by the firemen following da-da-da-da-da. That's the policy. The procedure is how to do it and the steps that are taken to ensure that the equipment is operating properly and being decontaminated properly. I don't think that needs to be encased in a policy. It would be better served to be in a procedure manual that the firemen have and are educated on, and I'd be interested to hear what the chief has to say about that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fire Chief.
Through Chair. Yeah, that's one way of looking at the policies. If I take out my procedural aspects out of the policies and just have one or a couple lines saying we shall have a decon policy and then put things under a guideline, then it's very hard for me to enforce because it's a guideline, general guideline. Or a standard operating procedure, but it's still just an operating procedure. But if I put it in a policy, and there's a lot of information missing from there that will lead to checklists and guidelines, but a lot of the information in there is we have to do our due diligence, especially when it comes to health and safety, and I feel that it needs to be listed, so.
Councilor Kersey.
Just as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, and as a comment to the chief and as a question, if we encased within the policy a statement that basically says something that the firefighters must comply with this or shall comply with this, the procedures that are outlined in the procedure manual, then it's encased in the policy and it does give you teeth to enforce it, as opposed to putting all of those wordings in the policy. I don't want to split hairs. I'm just trying to be consistent in the way we present our policies. Our policies are typically very short, very crisp, very clear statements of what's important. The procedure manual is how it's put into force. So, Chief,
Any further comments from the chief?
Mr. Chair. No, I guess I look at it differently, but if you'd like me to rewrite them, I'll rewrite them. So it's not an issue with me. I just like to defer them and I'll go back at it.
it may be only my opinion, Chief. Maybe the others would like to
Let's
comment on it.
hear from other members of council, perhaps. Perhaps not. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To comment on what Councillor Kersey has put up, I'm a real stickler for having short, concise policy statements as well, and generally I would be supportive of the position that the councillor has taken. I have an appreciation, though, for what the chief has indicated, that in order for him to enforce it, he wants to have the power of a policy. And in the circumstances that we're talking about here, i.e. Situations that are grave and indeed may be life and death and related to health, as opposed to merely administrative, I think I have a great deal of sympathy for the chief's position. So in this case, I think I'm willing to tolerate on that basis a great deal more procedure in the policy than I might otherwise have an appetite for. So that would be my view with respect to that, and perhaps the chief can comment, perhaps others may want to comment, but I have another question in this that I don't mind coming back to after this round is done.
Anyone else on the discussion we're having? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the same feeling as Councillor Kersey. I'm just wondering if, you know, and I understand the chief's position in terms of trying to enforce these policies. I thought they were standard operating procedures. So maybe the chief could just check around. I mean, council can approve this, and if there's another way that will still allow the rigor that the chief is hoping for, we can try that. But in the meantime, I mean, I'm satisfied with these. There's a lot of meat here.
Yes.
I guess the in general, again, to build on what Councillor Ribbiak has said, when it comes to a health and safety issue, it's got to be as clear as possible. So, you know, and if there's something that needs to be changed, you're going to bring it to council and all that other stuff. Well, they should be able to change that through training. So there's kind of that happy medium sweet spot area on this. So I understand what the chief is saying. If it can be more policy like, instead of procedure light, which is what we have, you know, I think it'd be helpful. But if this is what the chief, maybe he's already done the research and we can hear from him. But if there's another way that he can recommend to council at our next meeting, saying, oh yeah, by the way, checked into it and others are doing this, that's great, or checked into it and this is the best practice. I think it's important for us to know that too.
Mr. CEA, CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that I can offer a suggestion to council that perhaps we do, council do look at referring these back to staff. I think the solution to this is a compromise between both, and perhaps the solution statement is too procedural. That content can be flipped into the key facts, so it retains the chief's concern with regards to the weight of it in policy, and the solution statement itself could be quite simpler, which would reflect the comments of some of the councillors. So if you'd like us to do that, I don't think that would be an issue, and I think we could accomplish both goals at the same time.
I agree. To this, Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the CAO is making an excellent proposal. Again, I have another matter, but we'll wait until this one's done.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak on? No, I'm sorry. Mr.
Just
Mayor?
on that, and I appreciate the CEO's suggestion. I'm looking just to go specific for a little fine-tooth combing here for a second. The Pelham Respiratory Protection Program, at the very end, there's some references listed, Mr. Chair. So section 21 of this, the NFPA standards for breathing, and the CSA, safe use care of respirators. Are those are there as, I just want to understand why they're listed as references. Are they things that each of the firefighters would have been trained at fire college, or the training officers would know, et cetera, and those are the kind of things you grab and those are the ones that you're going to be using? Or are they sort of best practices in the industry upon them. Like, how are those specific guidance notes and all of that used in relation to this, to a policy in general?
Mr. Fire Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair, well, starting with Section 21 guidance notes, they call them Section 21 guidance notes, but it's a committee made up of chiefs and industry experts and so forth, and they put these standards or guidelines together, and then they're given to us so we can write these policies or write these procedures more specific. And if you go into your Occupational Health and Safety Act, they refer to
Okay.
these standards. If you, whatever, doesn't have to be fire stuff, it could be some of the stuff that Nancy and, or the clerk and CEO deal with in their committees, and throughout those documents, there are references, and they're more specific details in there that refer to this.
So if again, if somebody was saying, okay, how do we do this, these respiratory protection, do they only look at this policy? Is there a procedure that they look at, or do they go to these references?
Go to this policy and they look at this stuff, and if they see something in there they don't quite understand, if they want further detail into it, then they can dig deeper into the standard or the spec that's put out by CSA,
Okay.
ULC,
All right.
Section 21,
Okay.
and so forth.
That's helpful. I appreciate the answer, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Pat?
Very quickly, I think CAO's suggestion is well taken, and we should proceed, and I think through the chief, I'm going to try and simplify it. This stuff is not discretionary, so it's mandatory, it puts people at high risk, so for the sake of brevity, but to protect it, you just can't play around with this.
No.
So this is stuff that, you know, and I would presume, I'm not going to, that every volunteer firefighter, anybody would be trained to the utmost highest standards. So it's implied, if you know what I'm getting at, that it's there. It's not something you can, the chief can turn around and say, well, we don't have to do this, we don't have to do this. The answer is, that's not the case. So why don't we try that basis, and that way it'll make it clear. When I look at it, is it's rooted in very specific industry standards and legislation. Right? Is that a fair way to say it?
Yes.
Okay, that protects us, so those are the procedures. And to help, you know, what the chief said, it's not a guideline, basically, they gotta follow it. Because if they don't, and somebody gets injured, they'll right away go back and say, what did you guys do? Okay, that's,
Okay. Anyone else? So we all,
well, another question.
okay. So we're asking, ask for a motion to refer back to staff, and then we await their policy change.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, yeah. So we need a
Councillor
mover.
Kersey moved that.
Hey, Councilor Kersey. And a seconder?
You don't need
Oh.
But Mr. Chair,
Oh,
it's
we
on my
don't need
other
a
item.
second, you're right. Oh, on the same item, I'm sorry.
On a
Councilor
different
Wagner.
part, on a different part of this
Oh.
policy.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to note for clarity from the chief, whether anything in this policy is actually new or different than what we're doing now. Is there something new being proposed? Is there some implication to budgeting or a need for anything else in the future as a result of this?
There, Mr. All these documents, and we'll call them policies because they're obviously not so. Documents are all brand new.
Well, you're sensitive.
They're all brand new because a little bit of background in the beginning of the documents. I mentioned that the Ministry of Labor is coming around to all the fire stations. They're doing in-depth investigations and audits because there's been a dramatic increase in cancer
Right.
deaths in firefighters.
That's right.
And they're coming to us and they're going, what do you have in place to protect your firefighters? I have this. If I don't have this, which we never did, and they haven't been here, and I anticipate them will be here someday. There's a couple. St. Catharines is one that's been like dragged through the ringer by the Ministry of Labor over the stuff because they've had so many claims, WSCB claims, for firefighter deaths. We've been very fortunate, but they're going to come and they're going to knock on the door and they're going to want to know what we have in place, and I'm just kind of like I said, yeah, these are brand new.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the answer. I guess my question is this: as a result of the clarification of these these policies, or at this point, proposed policies, and an understanding of what the requirements are. Will this result in our needing to include in the budget for next year for additional equipment, more personal equipment, different kinds of kits? Is there other than just a change in the policy, is there going to be a requirement for us to respond to these needs with money, equipment, that sort of stuff?
Through Mr. Chair, no, I've been working on this for a few years now.
Okay.
Building our inventories. We have pretty well have purchased or will be purchasing in the near future, and I have it worked into the existing and budgets moving forward. So there won't be any, I can't foresee any additional costs. We're in good shape that way, so.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Don't, you know,
Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Councillor Kersey?
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could add to the motion to have the amended report come back directly to council so that we can get it into place, as opposed to bringing it back through committee, that will bring it to the next council meeting, we can get it enacted, and then the chief can relax and be happy again.
We want a happy chief.
I'll buy you a beer after, chief.
Put it on the original motion.
So we vote on the motion, or we vote on the amendment?
Put on the amendment,
Yeah.
and then on the motion as amended.
Okay. So on Councillor Kersey's amendment, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, none. Good. So now on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Okay.
So now you're just gonna circle
Oh.
referred right there. Thank you.
Okay, next. Motion put forward by Councillor Durley that committee recommend that council receive the Pelham Transit June 2016 update report, and that staff be directed to prepare a transit analysis in October 2016 to enable council to determine the feasibility of continuation of the Pelham Transit system following the conclusion of the pilot program, which will occur March 31st, 2017. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Papp.
Excellent report, exactly what I want to see through you. I wouldn't just call it a transit analysis, I'd call it the business case to move forward on a longer term basis. That's probably, because there's several things both the mayor and I know that are happening at the region with the transportation steering. So if you're going to do this, you got to do it now.
Yep.
So congratulations, let's pour the concrete in the platform for it, so build the business case. That's what I would call it.
Anyone
Thank you.
else? Councillor Durley?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wonder, when we presented our facts to the AMO people, we were led to believe that they were studying everything, and when we asked, this is a pilot project, will be anything else coming forward, they said that they would anticipate something, but they would have to have a good look at it. Have we made an approach to them to see if there's a continuation of some funding that may go that will build on a pilot program that we've started here?
Perhaps the director can help us?
For you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have, I actually spoke at the MTO on a panel with other municipalities that received the pilot program. It was at a conference. And at that time, one of the challenges that we pointed out was what happens from here? And is there a continuation and so forth? And that's when they led us to the gentleman that deals with the provincial gas tax and newer municipalities in which they're highlighting the pilot program projects to participate in the provincial gas tax for transportation, for busing purposes. And that's what we've identified. We, to date, they have not announced that they're going to continue with the pilot program. For instance, the town of Grimsby is waiting for that announcement, and there's nothing out there as yet for new municipalities. So the only thing that is there for us is the provincial gas tax for busing.
Anyone else? Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I have a question regarding the estimated revenues and the implications with respect to the gas tax. As I look at the calculations here, if our revenues are minimized, then it appears that the municipality is paying a larger component. Does that up the gas tax? If not, maybe in the first year, it certainly appears that it would have an implication in the second year, because it's every other year that you sort of get that bump. So,
The gas tax is per capita, that's how it's calculated, so the 135 would be our max. So what they're suggesting is then if we have expenses of only 180, our actual expenses are only the difference between the 135 and the 180, so next year you are gonna get cut down on that gas tax. So just for the purposes of bringing this report forward, we showed that it was gonna be maximizing that avenue, because we would assume that if we're gonna do a business case, that we were going to expand the scope of the service. And as Councillor Papp had indicated, you know, we want to stay in that mix with this inter-municipal transit that's coming, and also possibly the GO train coming down there, and not losing sight of that. So this is how the business case, this report was developed.
just a comment, Mr. Chair. So nothing here really argues against having a minimal fare. You have to have some fare, I understand.
That's correct,
But
you
you
can
could have
charge a penny if you
a
like, you
penny
just have to charge
and-
something. You
Try
have
to
to have a fee.
optimize your gas tax.
Yeah, you can't say that you're subsidizing the fares, because then you're not eligible for the gas tax revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I was gonna ask the same question about the fare. So I think when the report comes forward, I think there should be some options for us. To build on what Councillor Durley spoke about regarding AMO, there are some members of council and myself going to AMO this year. And they do have a request to make presentations to various ministries again, and I think it's one that we should do to give them an update, tell them the good news, also tell them, you know, what our experience is. I think it'd be helpful, so just to build on that. I guess the point in terms of the program continuing, I just want to get clear in terms of this, the capping on the provincial gas tax piece. If we were to continue, like right now we're getting, I'm trying to think, where is it here? How much do we get from the provincial government? $100,000, right?
Correct.
But there's the potential, if we design the system properly, we could get 135,000. Yeah, so I'm just thinking of the, you know, the way to move it forward in the sustainability. If it, arguably, is it sustainable now? Maybe, and if we can use that provincial gas tax to supplement the MTO money, then it can be sustainable in the future. So it sounds like that's the piece that staff are working on. Is that how you're arranging it? I don't know who wants to answer that, Mr. Chair, but is that how staff are essentially going to come forward in the fall with that cost allocation?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The issue with the provincial gas tax and other grants is that would reduce what our overall cost would be, so it would further reduce the provincial gas tax that we were receiving. So if the MTO comes out with another grant for this project, you can't have provincial gas paying for more than 50% of a project. So and it's the same, it works with our federal gas tax. We have those stipulations as well. So that MTO grant would actually reduce the amount of federal provincial gas tax that we're getting for this project.
Yeah, but I'm talking post-grant, Mr. Chair. Post the MTO grant, we're looking for sustainability.
Yes, we would definitely want to be maxing out at that 135 if it's a good business case to keep it going.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I look forward to that report. That information helps. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Very helpful.
Anyone else? If I could ask the director two questions, perhaps. You used the example of the Rosa lady in North Pelham. So there's also a similar program, and maybe I'm wrong here, from the region, or is that only strictly, would the person, the rider, him or herself, have to be handicapped? Or could she have used the region program?
To you, Mr. Chair, to you. In actual fact, when her husband was at home, they were using the regional specialized transit.
Okay, yep.
When he ended up in the hospital, she no longer qualified to use that service. So that's when it came to our attention. We were able to put in the stop, and we took her by the hand, taught her how to use the system, and got her to the hospital.
Excellent, thank you. And my one other question is, now that school has ended for the college and university students, have you tweaked the routes at all? Yeah.
Matter of fact, as of next week, we'll be implementing our summer schedule. It will be hitting our facilities like the pool. New stops are Centennial Park, the Pelham Pool Skate Park, the arena, which is existing. We will start going right to Sobeys Door, as well as we will go right into the Fontaine Plaza, and we'll go right to Lookout Ridge Nursing Home Door and Short Hills Villa Door, and at least 3 to 4 times a day.
Wow, excellent.
Yes,
Thank you.
we've also implemented, the overall program is a 10-hour day, which we have to offer 5 hours of conventional and the same for specialized 5 hours. We have found that our 5-hour specialized service is not being used to the fullest. So, in hearing from other municipalities, what they've done is they've implemented a dial-a-ride / specialized. So specialized service gets priority. Either way, it would be a 48-hour appointment, if you want to call it. Whereas we will be using that for anyone in the municipality, whether it is specialized or not. If a specialized person doesn't need it, client doesn't need it, we'll go and pick them up and take them to where they need to be. And we're working on groups of people.
Excellent, thank you.
We're encouraging that and see how it works out.
And one last thing, I take it you're advertising all these new changes?
Yes.
In the paper and on the website, or, yeah?
We're just finalizing our routes and our times through Sharp, as well as, we finally got today, actually, the final confirmation for Fontaine Plaza, because we need permissions to stop and where it can stop and where the sign can go and so forth. So.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. Call the motion to order? Vote on the motion? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay. So a motion put forward by by Mayor Augenstein. The Policy and Priorities Committee received the report entitled Beautification Committee Correspondence to Council. Is this the one that we should be deferring?
No,
Oh.
this is the one that was deferred from the last meeting.
Ah, okay,
Just coming for
excellent.
information.
So this was deferred from the last meeting, and we're discussing it now then.
Just
Okay.
receiving it for information.
Yeah. Receiving it for information. Discussion on it. On the motion. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm confused.
Oh.
on one side of the report, we get comments that we don't have staff that can do it, that are trained to do it, or the timing to do it. On the other side, it appears almost that we're supporting the recommendation of the beautification committee, which is to hold the Trillium, the cleanup and the garden and art tour, total 340 hours of staff time, plus some $5,600, maybe $6,700 in budget items. So I don't know if we approve all this or we accept this. It's in fact, are we going to suddenly have the staff to be able to do this? Or, I need some clarity, Mr. Chair.
Perhaps the Director of Public Works?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This was brought forward from the previous meeting. There was some mix-up in how this was handled, so I took the liberty of modifying our recommendation, which is the second item under this heading. So the first item was the carry forward from the first meeting. We discussed this. So the difference between the two is I struggled with the first one. I've had some time to talk to Councillor Ribiak a little bit more. Perhaps when we get into discussion about the second one, you'll understand what the struggle was and why the change in the recommendation from supporting the hours and the budget to, hey, let's slow down and have a look. You can see that in the next report.
Mayor Augenstein?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just, the clerk pointed this out to me before the meeting. I said, I'll move the motion just to receive it. So 5.1 is simply receiving what was put forward to us last time, and it was confusing. And so staff, and I appreciate this, have then looked at it a little bit more and put forward a proposal in 5.2. So I think just receive 5.1 as we did last time, and then let's talk about 5.2.
Okay, sounds good.
That works, yeah, let's do that.
So your motion is to receive it.
I'm sorry?
Your motion is to receive it.
Yes. So this motion is just to receive this report. All in favor? Any opposed? Report is received. Okay, a motion by Councillor Durley that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the report entitled Beautification Committee Correspondence, and that committee recommend the Beautification Committee consult the community on beautification needs and objectives and update the strategic plan accordingly. Discussion. Councilor Ribiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Council's appointee to the Beautification Committee, I think I want to make a couple of comments, and then perhaps the Director might fill in with the specifics and the details of her proposal. Let me just begin by saying that I have a tremendous degree of respect for our Beautification Committee members. They are highly motivated, they are intelligent, they have a tremendous work ethic, and they are much absorbed with the notion that the task that they've been given is to get stuff done. And what's less clear, and perhaps where the Director's comments go in detail, is the notion that what Council needs from them is advice. It's an advisory committee, and what we need to hear are what are the priorities of the community as determined through exercises by the Beautification Committee. How might those issues be prioritized, and how can an argument be made to Council as to which ones we ought to proceed with? What's a good way of proceeding in terms of cost, facilities, structure, and put that in front of us so that we can incorporate those things into our planning as we go forward, and then having achieved that, do another round and find out what the next set of priorities are, and just kind of repeat that cycle. Our beautification committee has looked at what has happened in the town in the past, those activities which were more often than not the work of the Communities in Bloom Committee, and determined that what the town was asking them to do was to continue with those items. So there's been a disconnect in terms of understanding of what it is that the role of the beautification committee was as we understood it to be and what they understood it to be. And we have done some work. I think the director will support this in trying to close that disconnect. And there's still some work to do. And I think that what the director's report goes to is how to close that gap, how to get back to the beautification committee with respect to let's clearly understand what it is that council is looking for and proceed from there. The recommendations that they make are with regard to events and with activities, and of course they put forward, as Councillor Kersey has suggested, a requirement. They've indicated what the requirement is. I'm not sure that we have a basis for determining whether the priorities they're talking about are sufficiently large for us to go ahead and make that expenditure. I don't think the argument is necessarily there. I don't think the research has been done, but I don't think it's been done because of a lack of motivation. It's just a lack of an understanding of what the process is. So I think that that's really where the report goes. And if we look at the director's report and consider it, perhaps that'll give us some direction in which to go. But really, I want us to understand that the beautification committee is populated with people who are highly, highly interested in the success of this town and the development of Pelham. And again, I hold them in the highest respect. We do need to close that gap, however.
Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pulled up the terms of reference, and while you were speaking, and when I read through the problem definition and how might we, in fact, the problem goes back to the terms of reference, because in fact, the terms of reference almost are for a working committee. You know, they're to initiate tidiness, they're to enhance environmental stewardship, they're to foster civic pride. All of those sort of things all speak to action as opposed to advice. So there's nothing there that says poll the community, speak to the community to determine what. So maybe we need to look at the terms of reference as part of this re-look at the whole thing. And so that these folks that sit on this committee are not wasting their time and getting frustrated because they think they're meeting the mandate by suggesting all these little activities, but in fact, that's not what we had in mind.
Sure.
So I think part and parcel to this relook is to look at the terms of reference. And I would assume that that's the implication that's included in that. Can we presuppose that?
Yes.
Councillor Vivian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Kersey is absolutely correct. The issue is with regard to terms of reference. The terms of reference do, in fact, in their detail, speak to activities, and yet it's identified in the terms of reference as an advisory committee, and therein lies the ambiguity. We want them to be an advisory committee. We need that information in order to be able to develop this town. So that's what the disconnect is. I think you're right. I think that perhaps a good direction that can come out of this discussion is that the terms of reference be reviewed, clarified, and structured so that better direction can be taken from them.
Anyone else? So perhaps then we have to go back and rewrite the terms of reference then. Is that what we're hearing?
Motion, right?
Right, yeah, make an amendment.
Amend the
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think your observation is correct, that to meet that, maybe the motion needs to be expanded or amended to say that somebody look at the terms of reference.
Yeah.
And again, marrying, what I like about it, if I might continue, Mr. Chair, what I like about it is that it is the committee consult with the community and the beautification needs and objectives so that we get that feedback from the community. And then the terms of reference can also be, asked about from the community perspective as well. And they can come back and say, okay, based on what we heard in the community, and knowing that council is looking for advice, they can have the discussion about, here's how we think the disconnect between the terms of reference, which is, a lot of it is action, and what council's suggestion is that we want advice, but also what the community is saying, so. I don't know what else to add that, but
Go ahead, you're
I'd be happy to just add that piece in. Consult community, update strategic plan and I would say make recommendations on updating the strategic plan and the terms of reference accordingly.
Yep. Let's just do that. That's perfect.
Okay.
So that my amendment, Mr. Chair, would be at the end of the second paragraph, would read, and make recommendations on updating the strategic plan and terms of reference accordingly.
Okay. And we have to vote on that amendment?
Yes.
All those in favor of the proposed amendment? Okay. Any opposed? No? Okay. Amendment passes. On the motion before us, I'm sorry, Councilor Jordan?
There is a part that's, I guess, more confusing than another. Under key facts, this committee is an advisory committee. Working committees may be established. So it's telling me two things here. So, in support of what Councilor Kirsty said at the beginning, and again, we're looking at a staff shortage in that department because there's so many things that they need to do now, and we're having to stop some things because we don't have the staff, we don't have the money to do it. So that there definitely is some work to be done connected with the beautification committee. However, how it gets done is, I think, the question. And they're looking for budget money for 2017, as I see, and they're also looking for some for this year as well. So I'm just wondering if some staffing needs to be looked at as well. But again, this may go back with the referral back, because there's certainly there's a lot of work connected with this, not just advice. So we need to take this seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else on that? So we'll vote on the motion then, and all those in favor of, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, the motion as amended, yes. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, it's a motion put forward by Councilor King, that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular committee meeting scheduled for Monday, July the 18th, 2016, unless sooner called by the mayor. All in favor?
25th.
Oh, I'm sorry. 25th? Okay. Scheduled for, I don't know what day that is then.
It's a Monday.
Oh, it's also? Oh, Monday, the 25th, 2016, unless sooner called by the mayor. And everyone in favor? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
I've got a new rule.
Fire away.